So today's radio is a little bit different of a repair. It's a Roberts R871. This is properly working, however on the wave change at the bottom for the shortwave it only goes down as far as number 5, and if I was to force it I would probably break it internally. So we can't select all of the shortwave bands, so we're going to take it apart and see how we get on. I think, without first having opened it up, that it'll just be the selector that's come off the runner inside, but let's open it up and find out. There are 2 screws on the back. This one also came in with the battery cover missing. Not a big problem. I plan on keeping this one in the workshop once it's done. It's not very often I listen to shortwave, but occasionally I'll have a little dabble. So those 2 screws removed, I'll just pop that aerial back down, and then need the spudger tool to open the case up. So let's slot it into the side. Give it a wiggle and work our way around until all of the clips are off. This can be quite tricky, however this one has been really quite straightforward. Just being careful because I know that there's some particularly short wires on the inside here and here that are attached to the back door. I should have taken the batteries out first, actually. Not a problem. Let's have a look at just wiggling. Do we just wiggle this board out? I have taken one of these to pieces previously. Months, years ago maybe. Just can't remember. It is clipped. I've just seen that. It's clipped there, and it should be clipped here too. There we go. And there's the radio open. Everything's quite tight here because the speaker wires here are quite short and still attached, obviously soldered to the board. I don't really want to take those apart unless I've really got to. However, let's have a look at removing the dial legend, because that will give us access to, if I use the spudger to point it out, this is the shortwave switch here. And the gubbins for getting to it are underneath there. It is just glued on at the factory, the dial legend. Yep, I don't know if you'll be able to see. Let's try and zoom in. Right down there. Can we focus in? Not quite. Zoom back out a little bit. Sorry, that was in. Yeah, just looking inside, I use a spudger to point it out. There's a little nodule just at the end of the spudger there, and just to the right hand side of it is the selector switch, and the selector switch has come off the nodule, so it will be just hopefully quite a straightforward case of lifting that up and pushing it across. Obviously, famous last words. I've never done one of these per se. I think this should just click off. I've never done one of these dial selectors. I might just have to get a different tool and just lever it forwards. A small, tiny screwdriver. Let's see if I can. Yeah. There, that's lifted it forwards. Slide it across. Pop the hole in the selector switch onto the nodule, and then that should be free to move all the way to the right and all the way to the left. So that's that done. It does look, this radio, I've never had this one in pieces before, but it does look like it's got lots of dust inside, and I can see some water marking on the circuit board. I might just give that a quick wipe with some IPA, isopropyl alcohol. I use an old toothbrush, and that should just clean that up on the LCD board. I mean, it is working, but this is just a little bit of housekeeping. Just make sure you can still see what it is that I'm actually doing. That's here on the right hand side. Some water marking, could be condensate, I suppose. I don't know where it's been used previously, prior to me getting it. Let's just clean this dirt up along the bottom where the selector switch is. And then we'll pop this dial legend back in. Now, I've done these several times before, and each time I've done them, put these plates back in, the dial legend plates, because they're such a snug fit anyway. I don't generally glue them back in if they'll sit nicely. So let's just see if this one will. That's something else I've just knocked off. Yeah, I think I will put a spot of glue on that, just to, I don't want it moving once I've put it back together. So it will just be the tiniest dab, just to hold it. Pop a tiny amount on the end of screwdriver. I never use the nozzle directly onto any of the sets I'm working on. Let's pop the dab on the right hand side, just on there and there. That should be just enough to hold it in place. Just before I set it down. Press. Nothing too drastic, the glue will hold that, it's almost inconsequential. Now I've got two of these switches that have dropped off while I've been doing this. I think it's two. Yeah, there's the one for the lock and unlock on the top. Make sure I get this in the right way around. Yeah, that's the right way. It goes on to the I don't even know if this is the right switch. I did hear another one drop off. Let's lift the radio up and have a look. No, it must be the only one. I've just got to get this to sit in there. That's on there now. Pop the radio back in by pressing it down, back into the chassis, making sure that all four corners appear flush. There should be, I mean, I've never had this one in pieces before, but I would imagine that there should be a couple of screws that hold the board down, but there aren't any screws there. Let me have a look at what I've got in my odds and sods tray. I'm just going to guess at the size of these. Whenever I take a radio apart that's past it, I take all of the screws out and put them in my odds and sods tray, because one day they will come in useful, as is proving the case today. There's a lot of corrosion on that board there. But as it's something I'm going to keep in the workshop, I'll leave well alone. The radio is actually working. I don't want to dabble with all of that tiny soldering in there, unless I really have to. Let's see if we can get this case back on. Pop it in on the side first where the headphone jack is. Which for me always is the trickiest part. I can never ever seem to get them lined up. There we go. Got it, that went in with a positive snap. Right. Press down all the way around. Let's put those two case screws back in. Now with the Roberts R871, we'll go through this in a moment anyway, but when you first put batteries in and the clock's not set correctly, the radio won't switch on. And a lot of people often think that that means that the radio is faulty because it won't switch on. But the time has to be set correctly in order for the radio to come on. Let's put some batteries in. And then I can show you what we mean. Well, because I didn't take the backup battery out, the time stayed as it was anyway. But there's a top tip for the future. You know, if you do get yourself an R871 and it appears like it's not going to come on, set the time first and then press the power button, and then the power will come on. So let's give it a go. I'll pop it here so that we can see. If I use the rest, try and get the glare from my lights off that, just so you can see what I'm doing. What can I prop underneath there? Try a watch box, just so you can see what I'm doing. Right, so this was the selector switch for the shortwave, which now moves all the way along. Previously it would only go back as far as number 5, and that's because it had come off the nodule inside. So we've taken it apart, we've fixed that, put the nodule back onto the selector switch, reassembled the radio, and let's make sure that we're working. And it isn't actually working at the moment. I think we're going to have to take this apart again. Inside on the power switch there's a tiny nodule that presses onto the switch, and I think that whilst we've had it apart this has rotated and it stopped the power switch coming on. So we're going to take it apart again, just so that we can have a look at that switch. I do actually love when radios don't work. I get the buzz, the thrill from resolving that, finding out why. So sometimes, like this one, it's proving to be quite a simple, straightforward fix, and other times I can be scratching my head for days. So now that I've put that screw back in, I have to take that screw back out. Unless that pop up, yep, and that pops up on that corner. Yep, the power switch. Let's move the camera up so that you can see inside. There's the power switch right in the centre, and the nodule's moved round just enough so that it's not pressing the selector on the board. So we'll turn that around. I was just testing that theory just to make sure that that was the case. Just dropped all the batteries out of there again. Let's put the lock switch back on. The batteries have dropped out again because there's obviously no battery cover on there. Pop this radio back in to its case. Trying to keep that power switch oriented correctly. Could put a dab of silicone on there to stop it twizzling round. I don't think that's going to be necessary. Although, just pressing this again, it does feel a little more positive. So before we actually clip it back together and fasten it together properly, we will try it with the batteries in, just to save any future embarrassment. There we go. So there's the radio on. And the power switch is working. So let's put that back off, turn the lock switch on so that I don't inadvertently power the radio on. Just make sure that moves freely. Yep, it does. Selector switches all moving freely. Alright, let's pop those screws back in. One at the bottom there. Not to go in too tight. I usually torque these in. But again, this is a ManLab radio to have on the workbench. And again, it's working. I'll just attach my external aerial.
Download the freebie. Mae yna bryderon ynglŷn ag adroddiadau bod cwmni Hitachi ar fin rhoi'r cynlluniau i godi gorsmod.
BBC Wales. And back down to my favourite.
What do you think of that?
Radio 2.
Donald Trump declare a state of national
And there we have it.
emergency
The
in the USA
Roberts R871 back to working order. We'll change the switch over to shortwave. That sounds good. Whether we'll pick anything up here on shortwave, I'm not sure. We'll give it a quick go. Usually on shortwave channel 5, which is between 5 and 6 megahertz, I usually pick something up. I'm on channel 1 at the moment. I'm not expecting to pick anything up at all. Let's try it on channel 5. Not really expecting to pick anything up at all really in the daytime. There's too much interference in the daytime. I've got a really weak station there. You might be able to see the tuning light glowing, just flickering slightly red. No, nothing at all there. We'll go up to channel 9, which is 13 megahertz.
By the end of 2017, France amassed over $1 million without identified sources. The bright money was confiscated by authorities.
So that's on channel 9. Obviously if I pick the different selectors now that the selector's working. That's long wave, medium wave, and FM. All done. Publish a template by this summer. An extra £1.3 million is being allocated. Another one saved, and a nice addition to my ManLab radio to have on for just general listening while I'm in here fixing all the fixables. Thank you very much. Further east, patchy rain and drizzle for most of